Paul Manafort cooperating, and a key focus here is that Mueller thinks Manafort has the goods. Manafort agreeing to tell him everything he knows about potential criminal activity, and that's by anyone, according to this new plea deal in writing, including Trump. I'll read it to you so you can assess it yourself. Cooperation in any and all matters as to what the government deems cooperation relevant, and Manafort agrees to be fully debriefed by the feds at any time, and then, as we've emphasized tonight, agrees to testify at any proceeding Mueller orders. You can see the other guilty Trump aides here. Manafort is joining quite the team. In fact, think about it like this. Every American who's been indicted by Bob Mueller has now flipped. Now, Trump says it's all about loyalty. He once said that's more important than anything. Roger Stone says you got to support Trump in anything he says and does, no matter what. Trump's longtime friend for decades says loyalty to him is allegiance. His biographer has noted it's not allegiance to the flag or the country. It's, of course, just to Trump. And it reminds some people of another kind of allegiance we remember from Goodfellas.
I'm proud of you. You took your first pace like a man, and you learned the two greatest things in life.
What?
Look at me. Never rat on your friends, and always keep your mouth shut.
Those are the rules in life as in art, but Manafort not keeping his mouth shut. Remember, Trump had praised Manafort even after the guilty verdict for refusing to, quote, break for a deal. And he says he had respect for a brave man. Well, today, that man broke. There is a deal. And Donald Trump has yet to comment on it, which is itself unusual. I bring back in former federal prosecutor Seth Waxman, and I have some breaking news to ask Seth about in a moment. But as promised, we also have another interesting perspective that we like on nights like this. Jay Goldberg joins me by phone. He was a lawyer for Donald Trump. He has a forthcoming book, The Courtroom is My Theater, and he has been quite candid on the beat before on a range of issues. Jay, do you think Paul Manafort had to make this decision and had no other way out?
Of Andrew Weissmann is a very, very powerful weapon in the government's arsenal. Andrew Weissmann runs the case. Bob Mueller doesn't run the day-to-day case. Andrew Weissmann is a very, very questionable prosecutor, and I'm concerned about Weissmann being in control of the destiny of Donald through the testimony of Manafort.
You think that Andrew Weissmann, who was in court today, who I also am going to go to some breaking news with Seth on because he described his deal with Paul Manafort today, you think that he is being too tough and you're afraid of what he's going to use Manafort's new information for against your client, your former client, Donald Trump?
Well, I think Donald has taken the position that there is no and was no collusion. And your guests frequently are hungry to devour him as a vulture. But you've got to understand that Manafort and Cohn are anxious to avoid prison and get the kind of sentence that Papadopoulos got, and under the direction of Weissmann, their testimony could be suspect. Weissmann is the prosecutor in the Arthur Anderson case that led to the destruction of Arthur Anderson. The conviction was reversed because, in part, of the misconduct in a 6-month trial of Andrew Weissmann. I don't like Andrew Weissmann heading this prosecution, and I don't like people anxious to avoid jail because the cases are legion in terms of people seeking to win the support of the prosecutor by testifying in a way that they think what the prosecutor wants to have them testify.
And sir, since you know Donald Trump so well, and I understand your perspective, you're critical of the prosecutors here, do you think that how do you think Donald Trump will take this? He is unusually quiet thus far today.
Well, I think Donald, and I speak with some knowledge, personal knowledge, believes that he will not be hurt by Manafort, that he is not a party to collusion, and despite the willingness of your guests to condemn him, he is firm in his view that the proof will show that there was no collusion.
Right. Stay with me, Jay. I want to bring in Seth. Seth, we have just gotten a hold in our newsroom of the actual transcript of what Mr. Weissman, who Mr. Goldberg was just referring to, was saying in court. And he reveals for the first time on the record in court that they had several proffer sessions with Mr. Manafort. He says what's not in the statement of offense today is it doesn't rely on information obtained from Manafort in the course of his proffer sessions, plural, that led to the cooperation today. Your reaction, what does that mean, Seth?
Yeah, I mean, that's very significant. That means that Mr. Manafort, for some days or weeks or who knows how long, has been sitting with prosecutors already and feeding them information. And they have been able to independently corroborate themselves to make themselves feel comfortable to accept that plea agreement, and that he has information that would provide substantial assistance to the government. You know, sometimes these kinds of deals start off with the lawyers making proffers on behalf of their clients. The prosecutors hear what the lawyers say, and then after the deal's cut, they sit down with the client and start to hear what's straight from the horse's mouth. This is obviously the opposite. Mr. Manafort himself has provided this information, so we're already a significant step into this cooperation, and the prosecutors have obviously credited it.
Now, the obvious question, Seth, the viewers at home are wondering is if Paul Manafort wanted to do proffer sessions, if he wanted to be, as we've called it, a queen for a day, if he wanted to get something back for all this, wouldn't he have been better off doing that at the beginning of this process rather than after he got one conviction in one trial?
Yeah, well, he rolled the dice. I think before that Virginia trial, he said to himself, look, I'm going to roll the dice. If I win in Virginia, I'll go on and fight it in D.C. I'll roll the dice there. If I happen to, roll 12 or the best roll you can roll, then he walks and he gets a free pass. He lost in Virginia. He had left, which is to walk into the prosecutor's office. It was always my opinion that the prosecutors would still take him in. They view him as just that important for the Trump Tower meeting and many other things potentially. The only X factor that complicated everything over time was this idea of a pardon. But obviously, Mr. Manafort, what David Corn said earlier, just put his faith in Bob Mueller more than he put his faith in Donald Trump.
Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.